Okay, so this month we're going to do a few videos looking at design systems. I thought it'd be interesting to look at what they are, how they're built, what are some of the complexities and pitfalls, and what are some good ways of structuring them. And firstly, really, in this video, I want to just look at what those different terms are. So people refer to brand guidelines, style guides, component libraries, pattern libraries, design systems. There's a lot of these kind of nebulous terms which I think have various overlaps. Maybe clarifying how those interlocked, what they do, and how they can work together to compose a useful system. But really, first question is like, why is anyone doing this? There might be some old guy in your office saying, we used to just have a Photoshop guy who would just make a lovely flat image, he'd send you the JPEG, and you can just go away, build that thing, and you're done. You don't need to mess around creating this whole system, which might be true. But the fact that that's the old way of doing it kind of answers your question. Is websites have kind of evolved a great deal more since then. It's quite unlikely now that someone would just design it once, build it once, and be done. Most projects are kind of ongoing things where there's always new pages, new features, and over time you're going to keep innovating and adapting something, and maybe also tweaking and restyling and relabeling something. You're going to want something that's maintainable and that can easily be adapted and edited as a living document. By having rules, systems, and reusable components, you're benefiting your developers and your design team because you can make easier adaptations and you can make logic behind every decision on what you're doing. You're also going to benefit your end users. They're going to find your website more predictable, more easy to understand and use, and they're going to have more expectation about how things should work. It can also convey a great deal about the emotion of the company, about the intent, the meaning, and put your users at ease that they're kind of in the right space. So it's about defining a language, defining an emotion, a mood about how you want to convey yourself, and basically having the documentation to keep that consistent and make sure that it expands across everything you're doing. So the first one you might often have when a company is setting up, or maybe a rebrand, they would often go for like a brand document. And this is usually something that would be outsourced to some sort of fancy branding company where you say, like, we need you to come up with a new brand for us, either as a part of a rebuild. New companies will quite often go away, get some fancy documentation. These things can be sort of they can be a bit hokey sometimes because they are very nebulous. They're often not very specifically tied to what you do. So they might it's that old thing of they go away for months, they charge a lot of money, and they come back with a squiggle as your logo. But then they'll often be attached to like a big PDF document that tells you all the Pantones and all the web versions of the colors that are used in that logo, a whole bunch of rules about it can't be used on certain backgrounds and so on. But they might also, with that, suggest, here are some of your brand colors. Here's your orange. Here's your purple. These are the colors you should use together. And sometimes they'll just show those colors transposed with images and sort of say, these are the way you should convey your images. These are the way you should represent things. Sometimes they'll have these kind of suggestions about kind of our values are positivity, respectability, influence, and you're kind of meant to boil this down into an actual practical project. They're kind of quite airy-fairy and open-ended, but they can basically give you suggestion towards what colors you should be using, what the kind of feel of your company is, the point of that logo or any branding about how it's meant to be used in what context, and kind of trying to give you some sort of definition. It can also sometimes specify fonts you should use and some rules about how things should work. So sometimes there are some design rules coming out of it, but it's often quite open-ended. So from that, you might be able to actually boil that down to a style guide, which might be an actual living document, something that's owned by your dev teams, your design teams, which is going to define, like, these are the fonts we use. These are the 3 fonts in the system. Our fancy font for headings and our body font and our regular font. These are the actual sizes we're going to use. This is a medium. This is a large, blah, blah. These are the colors we're going to use. This is our gray. This is our medium gray, our dark gray. These are our brand colors, the light version, the dark version. You're still not specifying where they should be used or what they explicitly mean, but you're kind of giving them labels. So you might still give the purple the kind of name of like brand purple or active purple, but you're not actually saying it's for headings or it's for banners or whatever. The point is that this is just a useful reference point. So people can say, like, can you use our main font? It's on the style guide. People can point to that document to say, yes, look, this is in our listed headings. And it basically will be a system of tokens, a system of settings that you're going to be able to then import and use when you actually come to build your components and your design rules. From that, you can then start to extrapolate your component library, which is going to be something much more owned by the dev team. This is when you start to specifically get into something like a drop-down or a banner or modal or an image display or something. You're actually now taking those rules that have been vague and nebulous and then more defined and actually using them in context. So you're starting to apply those colors in the right places. And those might work in conjunction with some sort of design system which kind of conveys rules about why those things are happening. Why are we using gray for a drop down? Why does the body text use the medium gray and so on? So now you're going to have to actually give some rules to say, like, we want to add contrast here. We always want to offer 2 buttons so the user can make one clear decision. We always want to have action buttons in the top right corner. So you might have a bunch of philosophies about how things should work, and those will help inform the actual components that you build. Some people are going for a system, Brad Frost's atomic system is quite popular, which is this naming convention of like molecules and atoms and particles. But the idea is kind of the same. You would take something kind of low level and reusable like a color, inject that into something very low level like a drop down, which then might be constructed with other elements to form a component such as a filter component, and then that might then be composed in a page. So the idea is you take smaller sets of reusable tokens, combine those up to build more complex use cases. And again, it's just about making a system that enables you to adapt things with context and feel like it's making conscious sense for you in everything you're doing, that everything has a reason why you're choosing it, but also it all adheres to a system. So you don't just end up throwing something together that feels right at the time, but it doesn't match with anything else in the system. If you have a project over time which lots of different people work on, you kind of want to make it easy to construct things, but also make sure you're not doubling up. You always want to avoid repetition. It's good to avoid repetition. Don't repeat yourself. It's good to avoid repetition. So, I mean, we'll get into it in other videos, but really design systems can be as open-ended as you like. You could go into great detail of text about explaining why things are being done or what we're aiming to do, or be a lot more technical and just specify pixel values about how things should display and look. It really would depend on what you're building and what values are important to you. It could be that animation is super valuable. It could be about copy and content. The point is you're just trying to make something that's going to be easy to work from, something that's going to make life easier. It's the key thing, easier for your developers and for your end users to benefit from, and avoid lots of edge cases or any kind of adaptation or rebrands in future becoming more tangential and messy. And that will probably involve some combination of all the things I mentioned, some brand documents, a style guide of some form, some specific component libraries, and some sort of design system or pattern library. But as I mentioned, there could be a lot of overlap where you are defining things in component libraries which are kind of more styles, or defining things in styles which really do define how components should work. So it's perhaps a bit of a murky world, but that's fine. I think it's about people not adhering to some sort of written in stone system. You've got to find what works best for you. That's all for now. But yeah, we're going to have a few more on this. Stay tuned. See you soon.